Deep within the heart of the savannah, surrounded by golden grasses that swayed with the wind, lay the kingdom of Amara. It was a prosperous land ruled by an aging king who had kept peace and unity for many years. Among the kingdom's greatest warriors was Chief Okoye, a man of great strength, wisdom, and ambition. On a fateful day, during a hunting expedition, Okoye ventured farther than ever before, following the tracks of a great lion. Unbeknownst to him, this path would lead him to a revelation that would change his destiny forever. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the plains, Okoye stumbled upon a sacred grove, its trees twisted and ancient. In the center of the grove stood three mystical sisters, the oracles of Amara, their eyes glowing with otherworldly light. Chief Okoye, the eldest of the sisters, spoke in a voice that echoed through the air. "We have foreseen your future. You shall rise to become the most powerful ruler in this land. But beware, your reign will be marked by betrayal, and ruin will come from those you hold dearest." Okoye was stunned by the prophecy. The oracles had never been wrong, and their words filled him with both excitement and dread. He returned to his village, the words of the mystical sisters echoing in his mind. That evening, he shared the prophecy with his wife, Neka, a woman of unmatched beauty and cunning. Her eyes sparkled as she listened to his tale. But when Okoye mentioned the warning of betrayal, her expression darkened. "The oracles speak in riddles," Neka said sharply. "But if they have foretold your rise to power, then you must seize it. The old king is weak, and the kingdom needs a ruler who is strong, someone like you." Her words were like fire to Okoye's already burning ambition. "If you want to be the most powerful man in this land," Neka continued, her voice low and dangerous, "then you must act now. The king's time has passed. You must take the throne before someone else does." Fueled by Neka's encouragement and his own greed, Okoye began to plot. His mind raced with plans to claim the throne. The only obstacle standing in his way was the old king, and Okoye knew there was only one way to remove him. Late one night, when the kingdom was asleep, Okoye made his move. He snuck into the royal chambers, his heart pounding in his chest. The king lay peacefully in his bed, unaware of the betrayal that was about to befall him. With a swift motion, Okoye plunged his spear into the king's chest. The old man gasped, his eyes wide with shock and pain, but he was too weak to fight back. As the life drained from his body, Okoye whispered, "Forgive me, my king, but your time has come to an end." And just like that, the throne was his. In the days that followed, Okoye was crowned as the new king of Amara. The people cheered and celebrated, unaware of the dark deed that had brought him to power. But the spirits of the ancestors were not so easily fooled. The sky above the kingdom darkened, and strange occurrences began to plague the land. Crops withered, livestock fell ill, and whispers of unrest spread among the people. "Something is wrong," Neka murmured one evening, her once confident gaze now filled with unease. "The spirits are angry." But Okoye, blinded by his new power, dismissed her concerns. "I am the king now," he said coldly. "The oracle's prophecy has come true. The kingdom will bow before me." As time went on, Okoye's rule became increasingly harsh. His closest allies, men who had once fought beside him, began to turn against him. There were rumors of rebellion, whispers that Okoye was not fit to rule. The prophecy of betrayal was starting to take shape. One night, Okoye's most trusted friend, Chief Obi, confronted him in the royal court. "You have lost your way, Okoye," Chief Obi said, his voice full of sorrow. "The kingdom suffers under your rule, and the spirits are displeased. You must make amends before it is too late." But Okoye, consumed by paranoia, saw Obi's words as a challenge to his authority. "You speak of betrayal," Okoye snarled, "but it is you who will betray me." In a fit of rage, he ordered Obi's execution, not realizing that this act would only hasten his downfall. The execution of Chief Obi sent shockwaves throughout the kingdom. The spirits of the ancestors grew even angrier, and their wrath was felt across the land. Storms ravaged the villages, and mysterious shadows lurked in the night. Okoye, once a fearless warrior, was now haunted by nightmares of the oracle's prophecy. In his dreams, he saw the faces of those he had betrayed, their eyes filled with accusation and sorrow. Nneka, too, began to crumble under the weight of her guilt. "We have done something terrible," she whispered one night as she lay beside Okoye. "The blood of the king and your allies is on our hands. The spirits will not rest until we are punished." But Okoye, though shaken, refused to show weakness. "I am the ruler of Amara," he said through gritted teeth. "No one will take my throne." As the kingdom descended further into chaos, Okoye's paranoia grew. He saw enemies everywhere, even among his closest advisors. The once confident king was now a shell of his former self, consumed by fear and distrust. Nneka, who had once urged him to seize power, now watched in horror as her husband spiraled into madness. "I warned you," the voice of the eldest oracle echoed in Okoye's mind. "Betrayal will come from those you hold dearest." And indeed, betrayal was closer than he could have ever imagined. As Okoye's reign continued, the weight of the prophecy bore heavily on Nneka's heart. She could no longer sleep soundly, haunted by the image of the old king's lifeless eyes. Every time Okoye dismissed her fears, she grew more distant. One evening, as the storm clouds gathered over the kingdom once more, Nneka stood by the window, watching the darkened sky. "Perhaps we were wrong to act so quickly," she whispered to herself. Okoye, sitting on his throne, overheard her. His eyes narrowed. "Do you regret our rise to power?" he asked, his voice filled with suspicion. Nneka hesitated, then turned to face him. "I regret the suffering we have caused," she said quietly. "The spirits are angry, and it is only a matter of time before we face their wrath." Okoye's face hardened. "You speak like a coward," he spat. "Do not forget who urged me to take this throne. We must stay strong, Nneka. The kingdom is ours. No spirit, no man can take it from me." That night, as Okoye slept, the ancestors visited him in a dream. He found himself in a misty field, surrounded by the ghosts of fallen warriors and rulers of Amara. At the center stood the old king, his once gentle face now twisted with anger. "You have defiled this land with your greed," the king said, his voice echoing across the plains. "The spirits will not allow your treachery to go unpunished." Okoye trembled, but still he tried to defend his actions. "I did what I had to," he stammered. "I was destined to rule." The spirits shook their heads in unison, their voices whispering in the wind. "Your destiny was to lead, but you have chosen the path of destruction. The prophecy you cling to will be your undoing." Okoye woke with a start, drenched in sweat. The vision shook him to his core, but his pride would not allow him to heed the warning. He dismissed it as a mere dream, nothing more. Yet, deep down, a gnawing fear began to take root. The kingdom of Amara, once a beacon of strength, began to crumble under Okoye's rule. The people, who had once celebrated his ascension, now whispered of rebellion. Crops continued to fail, rivers ran dry, and strange diseases spread through the villages. Okoye's council, once filled with loyal men, had grown silent, their eyes betraying doubt. One day, as Okoye sat in his court, a group of elders from the neighboring villages came to speak with him. "Great king," one of them began, "the land suffers, and the people are losing hope. We fear that the spirits are displeased. You must seek their forgiveness, or else the kingdom will fall." Okoye's hands tightened around the arms of his throne. "You dare question my rule," he growled. "I am the chosen one, foretold by the oracles themselves. I will not bow to the whims of angry spirits." The elders exchanged uneasy glances, but one brave elder stepped forward. "Power is not always given to those who are worthy, Your Highness. The ancestors watch, and they are not pleased." Okoye's eyes darkened with fury, and he ordered the elders' immediate imprisonment. But as the guards dragged him away, the elders' words echoed in the halls. The spirits will not rest until justice is served. As the kingdom descended into further chaos, betrayal began to fester among those closest to Okoye. His once trusted advisors now held secret meetings in the shadows, plotting his downfall. Okoye, blinded by paranoia, began to suspect everyone, even Nneka. One evening, as Okoye paced the halls of the palace, he overheard two servants whispering. "The king has gone mad," one of them said. "The people are suffering, and he does nothing but cling to power." The other servant nodded in agreement. There are those who say that the prophecy spoke of his downfall, not his reign. They say his closest allies will turn against him. Rage surged through Okoye, but it was not the servants he feared. It was the truth behind their words. Could it be that the oracle's prophecy was beginning to unravel? Was it his own allies who would betray him? As the weeks passed, Nneka's guilt consumed her. She had encouraged Okoye's rise to power, but now she saw the devastation it had caused. The kingdom was falling apart, and the man she once loved had become a stranger, cold, paranoid, and cruel. One night, unable to bear the weight of her guilt any longer, Nneka visited the sacred grove where Okoye had first encountered the oracles. She knelt before the ancient trees and wept. "I beg you, wise sisters," she whispered, "show me how to undo the wrong we have done." As the wind rustled through the leaves, the eldest oracle appeared before her. "It is too late to undo what has been done," she said in a voice full of sorrow. "The prophecy is set in motion. Okoye's reign will end in betrayal, just as we foretold." Nneka's heart sank. "Is there nothing I can do to save him?" she asked desperately. The oracle shook her head. "The spirits are angry, and the kingdom will not know peace until Okoye's sins are paid for in full." Meanwhile, unrest brewed in the kingdom. The people, tired of suffering, began to rise in rebellion. Villages that had once been loyal to Okoye now turned against him, and whispers of a new ruler began to spread. Okoye's paranoia deepened, and he ordered the arrest of anyone who spoke against him. But the more Okoye tried to tighten his grip on the kingdom, the more it slipped through his fingers. Even his once loyal soldiers began to desert him, and the palace became a fortress of fear and suspicion. Okoye's once strong and commanding presence had withered into that of a desperate man. He trusted no one, not even his wife. Every shadow in the palace seemed to whisper betrayal, and every night he dreamed of the spirits coming to take him away. In a moment of desperation, Okoye called upon the oracles once more. He returned to the sacred grove, now overgrown and dark, and demanded answers. "You foretold my rise to power, and I have fulfilled the prophecy. Why is my kingdom falling apart?" The eldest oracle stepped forward, her voice filled with cold wisdom. "We foretold your rise, yes, but we also warned you of betrayal. You have set this path in motion, and now you must face the consequences. The spirits will not be denied." The unrest within the kingdom spread like wildfire, and Okoye could feel the tension mounting from all sides. Even within his court, the seeds of treason had been sown. His advisors, once pillars of loyalty, now whispered behind his back, their alliances shifting toward those who might challenge his rule. Okoye's right-hand man, Nwosu, was the first to falter. Though he had once been Okoye's most trusted ally, Nwosu saw the kingdom crumbling and began to doubt his king's ability to lead. In secret, he met with a group of rebel leaders who sought to end Okoye's reign. "The people suffer," Nwosu murmured in the shadows, "and Okoye has lost his way. It is time for new leadership." The rebels, eager to seize power, welcomed Nwosu's defection. Plans were set in motion to overthrow Okoye, and soon the whispers of rebellion grew louder. Nneka's heart was torn between loyalty to her husband and the undeniable truth that his reign had become disastrous. Desperate to avert the catastrophe she felt looming over them, she approached Okoye one evening, her voice trembling with emotion. "Okoye, my love," she said, taking his hand. "The kingdom is falling apart, and your closest allies are turning against you. Please listen to reason. We can still save what we have." But Okoye, consumed by paranoia and pride, pulled his hand away. "I need no saving," he snapped. "Those who plot against me will be dealt with. You should not concern yourself with matters of the throne." Nneka's heart sank. She could see the fear in his eyes, the fear he refused to admit, and she knew that unless he changed his course, the kingdom would soon be lost. That night, Okoye had another dream, one more vivid and terrifying than any before. In his dream, he stood on the great hill overlooking his kingdom. The once lush savannah was scorched and barren, the rivers dry, and the villages in ruin. Suddenly, from behind, a shadowy figure approached, a knife gleaming in its hand. Okoye turned to face his attacker, but before he could defend himself, the knife plunged into his back. As he fell to the ground, writhing in pain, the face of the traitor became clear. It was Nwosu, his trusted friend. Okoye woke with a start, gasping for air. The vision shook him to his core, but rather than heeding its warning, it only deepened his paranoia. Determined to root out the treachery in his court, Okoye took drastic measures. He ordered the arrest of several of his advisors, accusing them of conspiring against him. Nwosu, however, had anticipated Okoye's move and managed to flee the palace before he could be captured. In the dead of night, Nwosu and the rebel leaders gathered in the hills. "It is time," Nwosu declared, his voice filled with resolve. Okoye's reign must end for the sake of the kingdom. The rebels began to rally their forces, preparing for a full-scale assault on the palace. As the rebellion gained momentum, Okoye's fear drove him back to the sacred grove. He knelt before the ancient trees, his voice trembling as he called out to the oracles once more. "I have done as you foretold," he cried. "Why must I suffer? I demand answers." The three oracles appeared before him, their expressions somber. The eldest spoke first. "We warned you that your rise to power would bring betrayal and ruin. The spirits cannot be ignored, Okoye. You have taken the throne by blood, and now the blood of your kingdom will be spilled." Okoye's heart pounded in his chest. "Tell me how to stop it," he pleaded. "There must be a way." The oracles exchanged glances, and the youngest of them stepped forward. "The path you are on cannot be reversed," she said. "But if you wish to protect your soul, you must seek the forgiveness of the spirits and accept your fate." Okoye, blinded by desperation, refused to believe it. "I will not fall," he vowed. "I will defeat my enemies, and my reign will continue." The oracles disappeared, leaving Okoye alone in the darkness. The weight of their words pressed down on him, but still, he clung to his fading power. As the days passed, the storm of rebellion gathered strength. Villages that had once sworn loyalty to Okoye now flew the banners of the rebels, and Nwosu's army grew larger with each passing day. In the palace, Okoye's once confident demeanor had crumbled into paranoia and rage. He saw enemies in every corner, even among his remaining advisors. Nneka, watching her husband unravel, knew the end was near. Though she had once been the one to push Okoye toward the throne, she now regretted every step that had led them to this moment. She could feel the spirits' presence, their anger thick in the air, and she feared what was to come. "Okoye," she whispered one night as they lay in bed, "we can still leave. We can flee before the rebellion reaches us. We could start anew." But Okoye, stubborn and proud, shook his head. "I will not flee from my destiny," he replied coldly. "I will fight, and I will win." Unbeknownst to Okoye, betrayal was already taking root in his own palace. Several of his guards had been secretly swayed by Nwosu, promising to open the gates to the rebels when the time came. Even some of his closest advisors had begun to plot his downfall, hoping to save themselves when the inevitable end arrived. In the dead of night, as Okoye paced the halls of the palace, unaware of the treachery unfolding around him, the wheels of rebellion were set into motion. At dawn, the rebellion struck. Nwosu's army, bolstered by defectors from Okoye's own ranks, stormed the palace gates. The sound of battle filled the air as the once loyal guards turned on their king, opening the gates for the rebels. Okoye, dressed in his royal robes, stood on the palace steps, sword in hand. His heart raced as the battle raged around him. "I will not fall," he shouted, though deep down he knew the prophecy was closing in on him. Despite his determination, Okoye was no match for the overwhelming force of the rebellion. One by one, his loyal soldiers fell, and soon the palace courtyard was overrun with rebels. Nwosu himself approached, sword drawn, ready to face the man he had once served. "You betrayed me," Okoye spat, his voice filled with venom. "You were my brother." Nwosu's face remained cold. "You betrayed the kingdom," he replied. "It is time for your reign to end." With a swift strike, Nwosu's blade cut through the air, and Okoye fell to the ground, his blood staining the palace steps. As he lay there, his vision fading, the words of the oracles echoed in his mind. "Your rise to power will bring ruin." And so, the prophecy was fulfilled. Okoye's ambition had led him to the throne, but it had also brought about his downfall. The kingdom he had fought so hard to rule was now in ruins, and the spirits of the ancestors at last found peace. With Okoye's blood still on his hands, Nwosu stood over the fallen king's body, but the victory he had hoped for felt hollow. As the rebels cheered, he turned to the throne he had fought to save, yet something deep within gnawed at his soul. The kingdom was now in his hands, but what price had been paid? "Nwosu, we did it," one of his comrades exclaimed. But Nwosu, staring at the blood-streaked ground, whispered to himself, "At what cost?" As the cheers of the rebels echoed around him, he realized the weight of his new role as ruler would not be an easy burden to bear. While the palace was overtaken by celebrations, the spirits of the ancestors remained unsettled. The act of betrayal and murder had stained the sacred ground, and their whispers grew louder. In the village, strange things began to occur. Crops withered overnight, livestock fell ill, and the river, once abundant with life, began to dry up. The villagers, seeing these omens, feared the spirits were no longer pleased. Old women gathered in the village square, muttering prayers and calling on the ancestors for mercy. "The spirits are angry," one elder declared. "The blood of kings has tainted the land. We must make amends, or the kingdom will perish." Nneka, though free from Okoye's madness, was far from free of her guilt. She had pushed Okoye into the path of power, and now, with her husband dead and the kingdom falling into chaos, she could barely look at herself. Every night, the spirits of the dead haunted her dreams, their eyes accusing, their voices hissing in her ears. "You, too, are to blame." Unable to bear the guilt, she sought out the village priestess, Mama Afia, a wise woman said to communicate with the spirits. "Please," Nneka begged, "tell me what I must do to rid myself of this curse." Mama Afia, her eyes clouded with wisdom, looked deep into Nneka's soul. "The path you and your husband walked was dark, and the spirits are not easily appeased. Only a sacrifice equal to the betrayal can cleanse your soul." Despite his internal conflict, Nwosu was officially crowned the new king. The people, desperate for stability, welcomed him. But the signs of the spirit's wrath grew more evident by the day. Nwosu's first act as king was to call for a feast to unify the people. But even as they celebrated, strange happenings cast a shadow over the festivities. The sky darkened unexpectedly, and an eerie chill swept through the kingdom. One of the villagers, a man known for his wisdom, stepped forward and addressed Nwosu. "Your Majesty, we must make peace with the spirits. Their anger will not subside until proper sacrifices are made." But Nwosu, eager to distance himself from the superstitions of the past, brushed the man aside. "We need no spirits to guide our future. We will prosper through strength, not fear." While Nwosu tried to assert his power, the spirits of the ancestors became more defiant. Nightmares plagued the villagers, and some even claimed to have seen the ghost of Okoye wandering the palace grounds, his face twisted with regret and anger. The more Nwosu ignored these warnings, the more frequent the disturbances became. In the dead of night, one of Nwosu's closest advisors, Aji, approached him with fear in his eyes. "Your Majesty, we cannot ignore this any longer. The people are frightened. They whisper that the spirits are conspiring to bring about your downfall, just as they did with Okoye." Nwosu clenched his fists. "I will not be ruled by fear. I will control my own destiny, and no spirit, alive or dead, will stop me." Haunted by guilt and unable to find peace, Nneka knew what must be done. Mama Afia had told her that only a sacrifice could cleanse the kingdom of its curse, but Nneka had not yet been ready to accept what that sacrifice might entail. Now, as the kingdom continued to suffer, she realized that the only way to stop the spirit's wrath was to give herself. Late one night, Nneka returned to the sacred grove where Okoye had first encountered the oracles. Kneeling before the ancient trees, she called out to the ancestors, "I offer myself to you as payment for the sins we committed. Spare the kingdom and take me in exchange." The wind rustled the trees, and for a moment, Nneka thought she saw the shadowy figures of the oracles in the distance. They said nothing, but Nneka felt a strange calm wash over her. She knew her time had come. As Nneka waited in the sacred grove, a soft light began to glow among the trees. The three oracles appeared, their faces solemn but serene. The eldest stepped forward, her voice echoing through the silence. "Nneka, your offering has been heard, but the spirit's anger cannot be soothed by death alone." The youngest oracle stepped forward. "The spirits demand justice, not only for Okoye but for all who have suffered under his reign. Your sacrifice will be accepted, but it will only delay the inevitable unless the kingdom is restored to its rightful path." Tears streamed down Nneka's face. "Tell me what I must do. I will do anything to save my people." The middle oracle spoke last. "You must reveal the truth of Okoye's betrayal to the people, and only then will the spirits find peace." Nwosu's court was crumbling. His refusal to acknowledge the warnings of the spirits had turned many of his once loyal supporters against him. Whispers of rebellion once again filled the halls of the palace, and even those closest to Nwosu began to question his leadership. One evening, as Nwosu sat on his throne, Aji approached him with grave news. "Your Majesty, there are rumors that the oracles have spoken once more. Nneka has made a sacrifice, and the spirits demand justice for Okoye's crimes." Nwosu's eyes darkened with rage. "Justice? Okoye was a tyrant. I saved this kingdom from his madness." But Aji, ever the cautious advisor, warned, "The spirits see all, Your Majesty. If we do not heed their warnings, we may face the same fate as Okoye." With the oracle's warning fresh in her mind, Nneka returned to the village, determined to reveal the truth. She called for a gathering in the village square, where she would tell the people what had truly transpired between Okoye and the king. "My people," she began, her voice steady but filled with emotion, "there is something you must know. Okoye did not rise to power through noble means. He took the throne by force, murdering the king and betraying the trust of the ancestors. The spirits are angry because we have allowed a reign built on blood and lies." Gasps and murmurs filled the air as the crowd processed Nneka's words. Many had suspected foul play, but hearing it confirmed sent shockwaves through the kingdom. As Nneka's confession echoed through the village square, the crowd's murmurs grew louder, turning into shouts of disbelief and outrage. The people had suffered too long under Okoye's reign, and now, knowing their suffering stemmed from betrayal, they demanded justice. "She speaks the truth," an elder shouted. "We have felt the spirit's anger in the land, the crops, and the river. Now we know why." The crowd grew restless, and Nneka could see the shift in their eyes. They were no longer mourning the loss of Okoye. They were angry. "We must restore balance to our land," a villager called out. Others joined in, their voices rising in a chorus of protest against the false legacy of their fallen leader. Word of Nneka's revelation spread quickly across the kingdom. Nwosu's court, already fractured, descended into chaos as advisors and nobles struggled to decide what should be done. Many whispered of rebellion, while others feared the wrath of the spirits if they took no action. Nwosu, however, remained stubborn. He refused to admit fault or relinquish power, convinced that the spirits were mere superstition. But even he could not ignore the signs, the whispers among the people, the mysterious events plaguing the land, and the guilt that haunted him. Nwosu, the people will rise against you if we don't act, Aji warned. This kingdom will not survive unless you make peace with the spirits. But Nwosu, his face set in determination, dismissed Aji's concerns. I am the king now. I will not be ruled by ancient stories. We will crush any rebellion, and the kingdom will bend to my will. Nneka returned to the sacred grove once more, seeking the guidance of the Oracle Sisters. She knelt before the ancient trees, the weight of her actions pressing heavily on her heart. As the wind rustled the leaves, the three sisters appeared again, their faces unreadable. You have done what was asked of you, the eldest oracle said softly. But your task is not complete. The spirit's anger remains, and the kingdom teeters on the edge of destruction. What must I do now? Nneka asked, her voice trembling with exhaustion. I have confessed Okoye's crimes. The people know the truth. The youngest oracle stepped forward, her eyes piercing. The truth is not enough. The kingdom must be cleansed. Nwosu cannot continue to rule, for he has ignored the ancestors' warnings and brought further harm to the land. The final prophecy is clear, the middle oracle added. Nwosu's reign will end in blood, and only then can the spirits find peace. You must be the one to guide the people through the storm. With Nneka's revelation, the kingdom became divided. Some remained loyal to Nwosu, believing his strength was necessary to maintain order in turbulent times. Others, however, rallied behind Nneka, seeing her as the only one who could restore balance and bring peace to the land. Nneka, though reluctant to take on this role, knew she had no choice. We must prepare for the worst, she told those who had gathered in support of her. The spirits will not rest until Nwosu is removed from power. If we do nothing, the kingdom will continue to suffer. Her words were met with nods of agreement. Even the elders, who had once been hesitant to act, now recognized the necessity of change. The time for peace had passed. The only path forward was rebellion. Nwosu, once a man of reason and strength, began to spiral into paranoia. The pressure of ruling a kingdom on the verge of collapse weighed heavily on him. He no longer trusted his advisors, his guards, or even his closest allies. He believed that everyone, including Aji, was plotting against him. At night, he dreamed of Okoye's ghost, standing over his bed, his face twisted in anger. You took what was mine, the ghost would hiss. Now, the spirits will take it from you. These dreams left Nwosu shaken, but he refused to acknowledge his fear. Instead, he grew more ruthless, issuing harsh punishments to anyone he suspected of disloyalty. His actions only further alienated his people, who now saw him as a tyrant no better than Okoye. The whispers of rebellion soon turned into action. Nneka, reluctantly thrust into the role of leader, found herself at the forefront of a growing movement determined to overthrow Nwosu. The people, fed up with the suffering and strange occurrences in their land, were ready to fight. We will march to the palace, Nneka declared one evening as the rebels gathered under the cover of darkness. We will confront Nwosu and demand that he steps down. If he refuses, we will have no choice but to remove him by force. The people, armed with whatever they could find, spears, knives, and makeshift shields, nodded in agreement. They were ready for war, not just against Nwosu, but against the forces of evil that had plagued their kingdom for too long. As the rebellion brewed, the spirits of the ancestors gathered in the ethereal realm, watching the events unfold. They had remained silent for too long, allowing Okoye and Nwosu to shape the kingdom's destiny. Now, as chaos loomed, they knew it was time to intervene. The balance must be restored, one spirit declared. The kingdom is in peril because of the greed of mortals. We must guide them back to the rightful path. But how? Another spirit asked. We cannot interfere directly. The choice must come from the living. The oldest spirit, who had seen many generations rise and fall, spoke at last. There is one who has the strength to make the right decision. Neka, she will lead the people, but it is up to her whether peace or destruction will come. And so, the spirits watched, waiting for the final confrontation that would determine the kingdom's fate. As dawn broke, Neka and the rebels marched toward the palace, their hearts heavy but determined. The air was thick with tension, and the earth beneath their feet seemed to pulse with the energy of the spirits. Nwosu, having received word of the approaching army, prepared his soldiers for battle. This is it, Neka said quietly to herself. This is where the prophecy will either come true or be broken. The palace gates loomed ahead, and Neka felt the weight of the ancestors' gaze upon her. She knew that this final stand would determine not just the future of the kingdom, but her own soul as well. The gates of the palace were forced open as Neka and the rebels stormed inside. Nwosu stood on the steps of the throne room, sword in hand, his eyes filled with fury and fear. The two leaders stared each other down, the weight of their shared history pressing between them. Nwosu, Neka called out, her voice steady. The spirits demand justice. Step down, and we can end this without further bloodshed. Nwosu sneered, tightening his grip on his sword. I will not be ruled by spirits or superstition. I am the king, and I will die before I give up my throne. The rebels stood at the ready, waiting for Neka's signal. This was a moment that would decide the kingdom's fate. Great! I'll continue with the story, keeping the current depth in each chapter as requested. The moment Nwosu's defiant words echoed through the courtyard, the air grew thick with tension. Neka held her ground, staring at the man who had brought so much suffering upon the kingdom. But she knew this was not just a battle of physical strength. It was a battle of wills, of destiny, and of the spirits themselves. Around them, the palace guards hesitated. Some were loyal to Nwosu, while others shifted uneasily, their faith in their leaders shaken by the rebellion swelling at the gates. The people, too, watched from a distance, waiting for someone to make the first move. Think about your people, Nwosu, Neka called out once more. They suffer while you hold on to power that was never meant for you. You have angered the ancestors. Step down and let the spirits find peace. But Nwosu's face twisted with fury. The ancestors are nothing but myths, he spat. I will not be cowed by the fears of weak-minded villagers. Without warning, Nwosu lunged forward, sword raised, aiming for Neka. The sudden movement sent shockwaves through the rebels, and a gasp rippled through the crowd. Neka barely dodged the strike, her heart pounding as she realized how close she had come to death. The battle began. Rebels surged forward, clashing with Nwosu's guards. Swords clanged against shields, and the courtyard was filled with the shouts of men and women fighting for the future of the kingdom. Neka, her breath heavy with exertion, dodged another attack, her mind racing. She was not a warrior, but she knew this was her fight to finish. As she fought her way through the chaos, she could feel the ancestors watching her, their presence heavy in the air. The final confrontation had begun. Amidst the chaos of the battle, the sky darkened unnaturally. Thunder rumbled in the distance, and the wind howled through the courtyard, carrying with it the anger of the ancestors. The spirits had grown impatient. They had watched as Nwosu defied their warnings, and now they would no longer remain silent. Lightning cracked across the sky, striking the ground near the palace walls. Both rebels and guards paused in their fighting, eyes wide with fear and awe. The earth trembled beneath their feet, and the air buzzed with the fury of the ancestors. The spirits are angry, someone shouted, their voice lost in the growing storm. They will destroy us all if we do not stop this madness. Neka, panting from the battle, looked up at the swirling clouds. She knew the spirits would not rest until justice was served, but she also feared what would happen if the kingdom was consumed by their wrath. We must end this now, she cried out to the rebels. For the kingdom, for the spirits. As the battle raged on, Neka found herself standing face to face with Nwosu once more. His eyes were wild, filled with the desperation of a man who knew his time was running out. The storm raged above them, the ancestors' power threatening to tear the kingdom apart. "You can still end this, Nwosu," Neka said, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. "Step down, and the kingdom can be saved." Nwosu sneered, his sword raised. "I would rather die than give up my throne." Neka's heart ached with the weight of the decision before her. She knew that if Nwosu continued to rule, the kingdom would fall into ruin. But she also knew that taking his life would only add to the bloodshed and anger the spirits even more. Suddenly, she remembered the words of the Oracle sisters. With a heavy heart, Neka realized what she must do. As Neka raised her weapon, the storm above them seemed to intensify. The wind howled, and the ground shook with the ancestors' rage. But Neka did not hesitate. She had seen too much suffering, too much death, to allow Nwosu's greed to destroy the kingdom any further. With one swift movement, she struck. Nwosu's sword clattered to the ground, and he fell to his knees, his eyes wide with shock. Blood stained the ground beneath him, and the storm above began to calm. The ancestors had seen enough. Their judgment had been passed. Neka stood over Nwosu, her chest heaving with exhaustion and sorrow. She knew there would be no celebration, no joy in what had been done. But as the wind died down and the clouds parted, revealing the sun once more, she knew the kingdom had a chance at peace. Nwosu's body lay still on the ground, and the palace courtyard fell silent. The rebels, their weapons still in hand, looked to Neka for guidance. The battle had ended, but the war for the soul of the kingdom was far from over. "We must honor the spirits," Neka said softly, her voice carrying through the stillness. "The ancestors have given us another chance, but we must not waste it. The kingdom must heal, and we must rebuild, not with fear and greed, but with respect for the land and the people." The rebels nodded in agreement, their hearts heavy with the weight of the battle. They knew that Neka spoke the truth. The kingdom had been fractured for too long, and now it was time to restore balance. With Nwosu's death, the spirits seemed to calm. The strange occurrences that had plagued the land for so long began to fade, and the kingdom's crops began to grow once more. The people, though still mourning the losses they had endured, felt a sense of hope for the first time in years. Neka, now seen as a leader by both the rebels and the villagers, worked tirelessly to restore order. She consulted with the elders, the spirits, and the Oracle sisters, ensuring that the kingdom would never again fall into the trap of greed and ambition. The spirits, too, seemed to bless her efforts. The land became fertile once more, and the river flowed with clear water. The ancestors had been appeased, but Neka knew that their watchful eyes would always remain. As the kingdom began to rebuild, Neka looked out over the land with a sense of peace. The long, dark chapter of Okoye and Nwosu's reign had come to an end, and now the kingdom had a chance to start anew. The people, though weary, rallied behind Neka, trusting her to lead them toward a brighter future. The Oracle sisters had foretold great change, and while the path had been painful, Neka knew it had been necessary. As she stood before the sacred grove, the wind gently rustling the leaves, Neka offered a silent prayer to the ancestors. The kingdom had survived its darkest days, and now, with the spirit's blessing, it would thrive once more. As the kingdom began to heal from the scars of Nwosu's reign, the village elders gathered to discuss the future. They met in a secluded chamber within the palace, their faces lined with age and wisdom. Among them sat Neka, her presence now one of authority and respect. "We must ensure that the mistakes of the past are not repeated." Elder Obasai spoke first, his deep voice echoing through the room. "The spirits have shown us mercy, but their patience is not infinite." Another elder, Ifioma, nodded in agreement. "We need new leadership, someone who will guide the kingdom with humility and respect for the ancestors." All eyes turned to Neka. The elders had seen her strength and resolve during the rebellion, and now they sought her counsel. "What do you say, Neka?" asked Elder Obasai. "Will you lead our people?" Neka hesitated. She had fought to bring peace to the kingdom, but the burden of leadership weighed heavily on her heart. Yet, deep down, She knew that this was the path the ancestors had set for her. "I will serve the people," Neka finally said, "but not as a queen. I will serve as a guardian of the kingdom, guiding it with the wisdom of the spirits and the will of the people." Neka's decision to serve as a guardian, rather than a monarch, was met with both surprise and admiration. The villagers saw in her a leader unlike any before, a woman of strength, vision, and compassion. She would be the first in a new line of guardians, individuals chosen not for power, but for their devotion to the spirits and the land. The day of her coronation arrived. The sun shone brightly over the kingdom, and the air was filled with the sounds of celebration. People from all corners of the land gathered in the palace courtyard to witness the historic event. Elders and villagers alike stood side by side, united in their hopes for a better future. As Neka approached the sacred altar, the Oracle sisters appeared from the shadows. They had watched her journey closely, and now they would bless her ascension. "The spirits have chosen you, Neka," the eldest sister said softly. "May you always heed their wisdom and lead the people with a pure heart." Neka bowed her head in reverence. "I vow to serve the spirits and the people, never forgetting the lessons of the past." With that, the Oracle sisters placed a simple woven crown of reeds upon Neka's head, a symbol of humility and service. The people erupted in cheers, their faith in her unwavering. Despite the joy of Neka's coronation, it wasn't long before she faced her first challenge as guardian. News arrived from the outskirts of the kingdom. A neighboring tribe, the Igala, had begun to encroach on the kingdom's borders, claiming land as their own. Neka knew this could lead to war, something the kingdom could not afford. She gathered her council to discuss the matter, determined to find a peaceful solution. "We must be careful," Elder Obasai warned. "The Igala are strong and they have powerful warriors. If we engage them, it could bring disaster upon us." Neka nodded. "We cannot risk more bloodshed. I will go to their leader myself and speak with them." The council murmured in surprise. "You alone?" asked Ifioma. "It is dangerous." But Neka was resolute. "I trust the spirits will guide me. We must show the Igala that we seek peace, not war." Neka set out with a small group of trusted warriors, making the long journey to the Igala kingdom. The path was treacherous, filled with winding rivers and thick forests, but Neka's resolve never wavered. She knew that the future of her people depended on the success of this mission. As they approached the Igala village, tension filled the air. The Igala warriors stood at the ready, their spears glinting in the sunlight. Neka could feel their eyes upon her, watching for any sign of weakness. But Neka remained calm. She stepped forward, raising her hand in a gesture of peace. "I come as a friend, not an enemy," she called out. "I seek an audience with your leader." After a moment of hesitation, the warriors parted, allowing Neka and her group to pass. She was led to a grand hut at the center of the village, where the Igala leader, Chief Ease, sat upon a throne of carved wood. Chief Ease eyed Neka warily. "Why have you come here, guardian of the kingdom?" Neka took a deep breath, her heart steady. "I come to seek peace between our lands. Let us find a way to share the land, so that both our people may prosper." The conversation between Neka and Chief Ease was tense at first. The Igala had always been protective of their land, and Chief Ease had little reason to trust outsiders. However, Neka's calm demeanor and respectful approach slowly began to soften the chief's stance. "You speak of peace," Chief Ease said, leaning forward. "But what assurance do we have that your people will honor any agreement we make?" Neka met his gaze with unwavering confidence. "I offer the blessing of the spirits and a promise that our kingdom will respect the Igala's borders. We seek only harmony, not conflict." Chief Ease considered her words carefully. The room was silent, save for the crackling of the fire. Finally, he spoke. "Very well," he said slowly. "We will negotiate a treaty. But know this, guardian. If your people break their word, we will respond with force." Neka nodded solemnly. "You have my word, Chief Ease. We will honor this agreement for the good of both our people." The treaty between the kingdom and the Igala was signed in the days that followed. It was a momentous occasion, as both tribes agreed to share the land and resources, avoiding the bloodshed that had once seemed inevitable. The spirits had guided Neka, and her efforts to bring peace had succeeded. As Neka returned to the kingdom, she was greeted with cheers and gratitude. The people had feared another war, but now they could breathe easily, knowing that peace had been restored. "The ancestors smile upon us," Elder Obesai said when Neka returned. "You have brought hope to our kingdom once again." Neka smiled, though she knew that the path ahead would still be filled with challenges. But for now, there was peace, and that was enough. Even though peace had been secured with the Agala, all was not entirely well within the kingdom. As Neka worked tirelessly to rebuild and strengthen her people, whispers of discontent began to grow among some of the more ambitious members of the royal court. These individuals had expected a more traditional ruler, someone who sought power for themselves rather than placing the kingdom's well-being above all else. Elder Ikeen, a shrewd and influential figure, was one of those who resented Neka's rise. He had been close to King Wosu and had quietly profited from the chaos during Wosu's reign. Now, with Neka in control, his influence had waned. "She is no queen," he hissed to a group of court officials during a secret gathering. "She speaks of the spirits and peace, but she knows nothing of ruling. We need someone strong, someone who can bring true power to our kingdom." His words planted seeds of doubt in the minds of those around him. Though Neka had brought peace, there were some who desired more than harmony. They craved power, wealth, and control. As Neka continued her work, she could sense that something was amiss. The spirits had grown quiet, and the usual calmness she felt in their presence was replaced with a growing sense of unease. The council meetings became tense, and more voices began to question her decisions. "I have heard the concerns of the people," Neka said to the council during one such meeting. "But our focus must remain on rebuilding and strengthening the kingdom. The ancestors have blessed us with peace, and we must not squander it." Elder Ikeen, sitting at the far end of the table, narrowed his eyes. "Peace is important, guardian, but so is power. If we do not expand our influence, other kingdoms will see us as weak. The Agala may honor their treaty today, but what about tomorrow?" Neka met his gaze steadily. "We will not seek power through conquest. The spirits have shown me that strength comes from within, not from dominating others." But even as she spoke, Neka knew that not everyone would accept her vision. There were forces at work, both within the kingdom and beyond, that sought to challenge her rule. Behind the scenes, Elder Ikeen began to gather his allies. He whispered to those who had grown dissatisfied with Neka's leadership, feeding their fears and ambitions. He promised them power, land, and riches if they joined him in removing Neka from her position as guardian. One night, in the shadows of the palace, a secret meeting took place. Ikeen had gathered several influential figures who were ready to turn against Neka. Among them was Amara, a wealthy merchant whose loyalty had once been to Nwosu and who believed she had been overlooked under Neka's rule. "We cannot let her continue," Ikeen said, his voice low but filled with intensity. "She is a threat to everything we have built. We must act before it is too late." Amara nodded, her eyes cold. "What is your plan?" Ikeen smiled, a plan already forming in his mind. "We will make it look like an accident. The people must believe that the spirits have turned against her. Then, we will step in to restore order." While the conspiracy against her grew, Neka was visited in her dreams by the Oracle Sisters. Their ethereal figures stood before her in the hazy realm between sleep and waking. "Neka," the eldest sister whispered, her voice echoing like the wind through the trees. "There are dark forces at play. Beware of those who smile in the light, for their hearts are filled with shadows." Neka awoke with a start, her heart pounding. She knew the oracle's words were a warning, but who could she trust? The faces of her council members flashed before her mind. She had always believed in the goodness of her people, but now she could sense the danger that surrounded her. "Spirits of the ancestors," she murmured into the quiet of her chambers, "guide me through these troubled times." As Neka pondered her next move, an unexpected visitor arrived at the palace gates. It was Kalu, the son of a former chief, who had once served in the king's court during Nwosu's reign. He had been exiled during the chaotic years of Nwosu's rule, but had returned after hearing about Neka's rise. "I seek an audience with Guardian Neka," Kalu announced, his voice firm. Neka agreed to meet with him, curious about what he might offer. As they sat together in her chambers, Kalu spoke of his time in exile and the lessons he had learned. "I see what is happening in your court, Guardian," Kalu said, his voice quiet but intense. "There are those who seek to undermine you. They believe you are weak because you value peace, but they are mistaken." Neka listened carefully. "And why have you come to help me?" Kalu smiled slightly. "Because I believe in the future you are building, but you must act before your enemies do." Neka felt a sense of relief at his words. She had been searching for allies, and it seemed that Kalu might be the one to help her navigate the treacherous waters ahead. With Kalu's assistance, Neka began to uncover the extent of the conspiracy against her. Kalu's connections within the palace allowed him to gather information, and soon they realized that Elder Ikeen was at the center of the plot. "They are planning to make your death look like a curse from the spirits," Kalu warned. "If they succeed, the people will turn against you, and Ikeen will claim the throne." Neka's heart hardened with resolve. She had faced many challenges since becoming the Guardian, but this betrayal cut deeper than any other. "We must stop them before they strike," Neka said. "But we must be careful. If we reveal their plot too soon, it could spark chaos." Kalu nodded. "I will continue to gather evidence. When the time is right, we will expose them for what they are." With the plot against her growing clearer, Neka worked tirelessly to strengthen her position. She focused on fortifying alliances and ensuring the stability of the kingdom. Her public appearances were carefully planned to bolster support among the people and reaffirm her commitment to their well-being. Despite her efforts, tension simmered just beneath the surface. The palace was a hotbed of gossip, and whispers of Neka's supposed inadequacies continued to spread. Many of the people had grown restless, fueled by the conspiracy's propaganda. In the royal gardens, Neka met with Kalu to discuss their next steps. "The people are beginning to question my leadership," she said, her brow furrowed with concern. "We must find a way to demonstrate our strength and unity." Kalu nodded. "We need a display of confidence and power. Perhaps a grand festival could serve as a reminder of your leadership and the kingdom's prosperity." The preparations for the grand festival were extensive. Every corner of the kingdom was decorated with vibrant colors, and artisans worked around the clock to create beautiful displays. The festival was to be a celebration of unity, culture, and the strength of the kingdom. On the day of the festival, the palace grounds were filled with music, dancing, and the aroma of delicious foods. Neka made a grand entrance, accompanied by her most trusted advisors, including Kalu. The people cheered, their spirits lifted by the festivities. As Neka addressed the crowd, she spoke of the kingdom's achievements and future goals. "Today, we celebrate not only our past but also our future," she said, her voice strong and clear. "Together, we will build a kingdom where peace and prosperity reign." The festival was a resounding success. For a moment, it seemed that the kingdom's troubles had been forgotten, and the bonds between Neka and her people were strengthened. However, the festival's success did little to quell the growing discontent among the conspirators. With the festival behind them, Elder Ikeen and his allies grew increasingly desperate. They had underestimated Neka's ability to rally the people and were running out of time to act. Their plans had to be accelerated. One night, Ikeen gathered his closest confidants in a dimly lit chamber. "The time for subtlety has passed," he said, his voice low and urgent. "We must act before the people become too loyal to Neka. We will stage an event that will turn them against her." His plan was to create a false omen that would convince the people that the spirits had turned against Neka. They would spread rumors of unnatural occurrences and use them to manipulate the public's perception. The conspirators set their plan into motion. They arranged for strange, inexplicable events to occur around the kingdom. Animals behaved erratically, crops withered unexpectedly, and ominous signs appeared in the sky. Rumors began to spread quickly. People whispered that the spirits were displeased with Neka's rule, and that their anger was manifesting in these unnatural occurrences. The kingdom's once vibrant atmosphere became tinged with fear and suspicion. Neka, sensing the shift in mood, called a meeting with her council. "Something is not right," she said, her eyes troubled. "The people are frightened, and I fear that the conspiracy may be behind these events." Kalu agreed. "We must act quickly to uncover the truth. If we do not, the people may turn against you." Neka and Kalu launched a thorough investigation into the disturbances. They sent trusted scouts and investigators throughout the kingdom to gather evidence and find the source of the false omens. As they worked, they discovered that the disruptions had been orchestrated to create fear and unrest. The investigators found evidence of tampering with crops and unnatural influences in the environment. With this information, Neka called another council meeting, presenting the evidence to her advisors. "The spirits have been wronged," she declared. "These signs are not of their displeasure, but of a deliberate plot against us." The council was shocked. Neka's transparency and dedication to uncovering the truth helped to restore some confidence among the people. However, the conspiracy was far from over. As the investigation continued, Neka and Kalu began to identify those who were involved in the conspiracy. They traced the rumors back to Elder Ekeen and his allies. One evening, Neka summoned Ekeen to her chambers. The elder arrived, feigning calm, but his nervousness was palpable. "You have been accused of treason, Elder Ekeen," Neka said, her voice steady. "We have uncovered evidence of your involvement in the plot to undermine my rule and create false omens." Ekeen's face turned pale. "This is an outrage. I have served the kingdom faithfully for years. How could you accuse me of such treachery?" Kalu stepped forward, presenting the evidence. "The proof is clear, Ekeen. The people have been misled, and your actions have endangered the kingdom." Realizing he had been caught, Ekeen tried to plead for leniency. "Please, Guardian, spare me. I only sought to protect the kingdom from what I perceived as weakness." Neka's gaze was unwavering. "Your actions have endangered us all. The consequences of your betrayal will be dealt with justly." The trial of Elder Ekeen was a pivotal moment for the kingdom. The courtroom was filled with tension as Neka presided over the proceedings. The evidence of Ekeen's treachery was presented, and the people watched with bated breath. Elder Ekeen tried to defend himself, but the weight of his actions was too great. The testimonies from those who had been involved in the conspiracy painted a clear picture of his betrayal. When the trial concluded, Neka addressed the people. "Justice must be served to ensure the safety and unity of our kingdom. Elder Ekeen's actions were a grave betrayal, and he will face the consequences." The verdict was met with mixed reactions, but Neka's handling of the situation reinforced her commitment to justice and the rule of law. With Ekeen's betrayal exposed and dealt with, Neka focused on rebuilding trust within the kingdom. She worked to reassure the people that their safety and well-being were her top priorities. Public forums were held where Neka spoke directly to her people, addressing their concerns and discussing the steps being taken to prevent future conspiracies. Her transparency and willingness to engage with the community helped to restore faith in her leadership. Neka also continued to work closely with Kalu, who had proven to be a valuable ally. Together, they implemented reforms to strengthen the kingdom's defenses against internal threats and ensure that the people felt secure and valued. As the kingdom began to recover from the turmoil caused by the conspiracy, Neka's leadership continued to evolve. She focused on fostering a sense of unity and purpose among the people, emphasizing the values of peace, cooperation, and respect for the spirits. The kingdom experienced a period of relative calm and prosperity. Trade flourished, and cultural festivals became regular events, celebrating the diversity and richness of the kingdom's heritage. Neka's rule was marked by a dedication to justice and the well-being of her people. The kingdom's stability grew stronger, and the lessons learned from the recent turmoil became guiding principles for future governance. As relations with the Agala remained strong, Neka received an official visit from Chief Ease. The Agala leader came to discuss the ongoing treaty and explore opportunities for further cooperation between their two kingdoms. The meeting was cordial and productive. Chief Ease praised Neka for her handling of the recent crisis and expresses admiration for her leadership. "Our alliance has proven to be beneficial for both our people," Chief Ease said. "I am pleased with the way you have managed the kingdom and the peace between our lands." Neka thanked him for his support and reiterated her commitment to maintaining a strong and positive relationship between their kingdoms. The visit solidified the bonds of friendship and cooperation. As Neka's rule continued, she began to think about the future of the kingdom. Her leadership had been marked by challenges and triumphs, and she was determined to ensure that the kingdom remained strong and prosperous for generations to come. She sought the counsel of her most trusted advisors and began to plan for the long-term stability of the kingdom. This included initiatives to improve education, promote economic development, and strengthen diplomatic ties with neighboring lands. Neka also took steps to mentor the next generation of leaders, ensuring that the values of justice, peace, and respect for the spirits would continue to guide the kingdom. Just as the kingdom seemed to be settling into a period of peace, a new threat emerged. Rumors began to circulate about a powerful warlord from a distant land who was amassing an army and planning to invade the kingdom. Neka took the threat seriously and convened an emergency meeting with her council. "We cannot ignore this danger," she said. "We must prepare our defenses and seek allies to help us face this potential invasion." The council agreed, and preparations began to strengthen the kingdoms. As the preparations continued, the warlord's forces made their presence known. They began raiding villages near the kingdom's borders, causing fear and panic among the people. Neka's resolve was tested as she faced the reality of an impending invasion. She gathered her military leaders and strategists to develop a plan to protect the kingdom and repel the invaders. The kingdom's defenders prepared for battle, and the people braced themselves for the possibility of conflict. Neka's leadership and the strength of the kingdom were put to the ultimate test. The day of the battle arrived, and the kingdom's defenders took their positions along the fortified walls. The warlord's army approached with overwhelming force, and the clash of armies was imminent. Neka led her forces with determination, her presence on the battlefield inspiring courage among her soldiers. The battle was fierce and hard-fought, with both sides displaying great skill and bravery. Despite the odds, Neka's leadership and strategic planning proved effective. The kingdom's defenders fought valiantly, and the invaders were pushed back. The battle raged on for hours, but Neka's forces eventually gained the upper hand. The warlord's army was forced to retreat, and the immediate threat to the kingdom was neutralized. Neka and her advisors assessed the damage and worked to provide aid to the affected villages. The victory was hard-earned, and the kingdom's resilience was evident in the face of adversity. Though the immediate danger had passed, Neka remained vigilant. She knew that the warlord might regroup and return, and she was determined to ensure that the kingdom was prepared for any future threats. In the aftermath of the battle, the kingdom focused on rebuilding and recovering from the damage caused by the invasion. Neka's leadership was crucial in guiding the efforts to restore order and provide support to those affected. The people came together to repair their homes, and the kingdom's infrastructure was rebuilt with a renewed sense of unity and purpose. Neka's dedication to the well-being of her people was evident in every aspect of the recovery efforts. As the kingdom returned to a state of relative normalcy, Neka continued to work on strengthening alliances and preparing for any future threats. Her leadership and resilience had been tested, and she emerged stronger and more determined than ever. Despite the initial defeat, the warlord was not easily dissuaded. Rumors began to spread that the warlord was rallying a new army and seeking allies to exact revenge on Neka's kingdom. Neka took the threat seriously and continued to strengthen her kingdom's defenses. She also increased diplomatic efforts to secure support from neighboring kingdoms and to build a coalition to deter any future invasions. The kingdom remained on high alert, and Neka's leadership was crucial in maintaining morale and preparing for the possibility of further conflict. In a strategic move to bolster the kingdom's defenses, Neka sought to form a new alliance with a powerful neighboring kingdom. She sent emissaries to the rulers of the land, presenting the benefits of mutual cooperation and support. The negotiations were complex, but Neca's diplomacy and the promise of a strong alliance were persuasive. The neighboring kingdom agreed to support Neca's efforts to defend against the warlord and to collaborate on various initiatives for mutual benefit. The new alliance was a significant step in strengthening the kingdom's position and preparing for any potential threats. To celebrate the new alliance and to reaffirm the kingdom's unity, Neca organized a grand celebration. The festival was a symbol of the kingdom's resilience and the strength of its new alliances. The celebration was a vibrant and joyful event, filled with music, dance, and feasting. The people came together to enjoy the festivities and to show their support for Neca's leadership. The celebration also served as a reminder of the kingdom's strength and unity in the face of challenges. As the kingdom enjoyed the festival, news arrived that the warlord had experienced a significant setback. Some of his allies had defected, and his forces were weakened by internal conflicts. Neca and her advisors closely monitored the situation, recognizing that the warlord's weakened position could be an opportunity to strengthen their own position. They continued to prepare for any potential threats, while exploring ways to capitalize on the warlord's difficulties. Just as the kingdom began to recover from the recent challenges, a new threat emerged from within. A faction of disgruntled nobles, dissatisfied with Neca's leadership and motivated by personal ambition, began to stir unrest. The faction sought to undermine Neca's rule and to challenge her authority. They spread rumors and incited dissent among the people, hoping to create a new crisis that would weaken the kingdom. Neca faced yet another challenge as she worked to address the internal threat and to maintain stability within the kingdom. The internal unrest grew as a faction of disgruntled nobles gained influence within the royal court. The court was divided, with some members supporting Neca and others aligning with the dissenters. The division created a tense and volatile atmosphere, making it difficult for Neca to effectively govern and address the various challenges facing the kingdom. Neca held a series of meetings with her loyal advisors, seeking strategies to navigate the divided court and to restore order. Recognizing the need for decisive action, Neca made a bold decision. She ordered a purge of the most disruptive elements within the court and sought to reinforce her authority through a combination of diplomacy and strategic appointments. The move was risky but necessary to restore stability. Neca's actions were met with mixed reactions, but her determination to maintain the kingdom's unity was unwavering. The purge of the dissenting nobles was a difficult and controversial process. Neca's decision to remove those who had undermined her authority was met with resistance from some quarters. However, the purge was effective in eliminating the most disruptive elements and in consolidating Neca's control over the court. The kingdom's administration became more streamlined, and efforts were focused on addressing the remaining challenges. In the aftermath of the purge, the court began to stabilize and Neca's leadership was reinforced. The kingdom's focus shifted back to its ongoing initiatives and to addressing any remaining threats. Neca worked to repair relationships with those who had been affected by the purge and to ensure that the kingdom continued to move forward with a renewed sense of purpose. With the internal challenges addressed, the kingdom enjoyed a period of relative peace. The focus shifted to cultural and economic development, and the people began to enjoy a sense of stability and prosperity. Neca took this time to engage in personal reflection and to strengthen her connections with the spirits. She sought their guidance and continued to emphasize the values of unity and justice within the kingdom. As the kingdom enjoyed its period of peace, a new challenge arose. A neighboring kingdom, envious of Neca's success and prosperity, began to make aggressive moves towards the kingdom's borders. The aggressive kingdom sought to exploit the kingdom's recent internal struggles and to challenge Neca's leadership. The threat was significant, and Neca knew that she needed to respond with strength and strategy. Neca and her advisors began preparations for the potential conflict with the neighboring kingdom. They worked to fortify the borders and to strengthen alliances with other neighboring lands. The kingdom's military was mobilized, and defensive measures were put in place to protect against any potential incursions. Neca's leadership was once again tested as she navigated the complex and challenging situation. The anticipated conflict began as the neighboring kingdom launched an invasion. The kingdom's defenses were put to the test as the enemy forces advanced toward the heart of the kingdom. Nneka led her troops with courage and determination, rallying her forces and working to repel the invaders. The battle was fierce and challenging, and the outcome remained uncertain. In the midst of the conflict, Nneka faced a critical decision. The invaders were pressing hard, and the kingdom's resources were stretched thin. Nneka had to decide whether to continue the fight or to seek a negotiated settlement. She weighed the potential risks and benefits of each option, knowing that the decision could have far-reaching consequences. Nneka decided to pursue negotiations with the invading kingdom. She sent emissaries to meet with their leaders and to explore the possibility of a peaceful resolution. The negotiations were tense and complex, but Nneka's diplomatic skills and determination to avoid further bloodshed played a crucial role in reaching an agreement. The negotiations resulted in a fragile peace agreement. The invading kingdom agreed to withdraw its forces, and both sides committed to a mutual non-aggression pact. The peace agreement brought a sense of relief, but Nneka knew that the situation remained delicate. The kingdom needed to rebuild and to strengthen its defenses to ensure long-term stability. With the immediate threat addressed, the kingdom focused on rebuilding and renewal. Efforts were directed toward repairing infrastructure, supporting those affected by the conflict, and reinforcing alliances. Nneka's leadership continued to be a guiding force as the kingdom worked to restore normalcy and to prepare for any future challenges. As the kingdom recovered, Nneka renewed her focus on the values of justice and unity. She emphasized the importance of working together and of maintaining a strong and resilient kingdom. The people rallied around Nneka's vision, and the kingdom began to thrive once again. The challenges faced had strengthened their resolve and unity. Nneka's leadership left a lasting legacy within the kingdom. Her courage, wisdom, and dedication had guided the kingdom through numerous trials and had shaped its future. The kingdom celebrated Nneka's achievements and the stability she had brought. Her reign was remembered as a period of resilience, strength, and unity. As Nneka's reign approached its conclusion, she began to prepare for the transition of leadership. She sought to ensure that the kingdom would continue to thrive under the guidance of her successors. Nneka's wisdom and experience were shared with the next generation of leaders, and the kingdom looked forward to a future of continued prosperity and growth. With the transition complete, a new era began for the kingdom. The values and principles established by Nneka continued to guide the kingdom, and the legacy of her leadership endured. The kingdom embarked on a new chapter, building on the foundations laid by Nneka and working to achieve new heights of success and harmony. The story of Nneka's reign became a legend, inspiring future generations with a tale of courage, wisdom, and leadership. Her spirit and legacy continued to influence the kingdom and to remind its people of the strength that comes from unity and resilience. The kingdom thrived under the enduring spirit of Nneka's leadership, and her story was passed down through the ages as a testament to the power of determination and the enduring strength of the human spirit.